Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, we're going to talk about the Timberwolves continually evolving and improving offensive identity, focusing on their three-point attack. It's finally one of the league's best. It's how the Wolves are now a top 10 offense. We'll also preview Wolves Magic tonight. It's all coming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy weekend and happy Timberwolves game day. The Wolves look to extend what is currently a 6-game win streak tonight back at home, finally, for more than one game at a time. They've been playing these one-game homestands, it seems like, well, really all season. But at the start of a 5-game homestand, the Orlando Magic in town tonight, obviously a winnable game. We'll talk about that toward the end of the show. I want to start with how the Wolves offense has changed as the year has evolved, and really more, not as much in terms of execution, or excuse me, not as much in terms of approach as execution. There's a little bit of an approach change. We've talked about the offensive rebounding. We talk about a little bit more work in transition, but the Wolves are just making shots. I promise there's more to say about it than that, but that's a huge thing here is that guys have started to make three-pointers. Remember, last year, this Wolves team was an awesome three-point shooting team. The first few months of the season, not so much. So we'll dig into that today before we get to Wolves Magic later. Here off the top, though, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Also, a reminder, you can subscribe to the daily Locked On Wolves newsletter at lockedondaily.com. You'll get an email to your inbox Monday through Friday. It's a one-stop for all things Wolves, all things NBA, delivered right to your email inbox. Sign up for free right now at lockedondaily.com. All right. So last season, it's easy to forget this, but the Timberwolves were actually the top three-point shooting team in the entire NBA. Now, that's according to Cleaning the Glass. I have to mention that if you head to Basketball Reference, NBA.com, I think they were like third or something. But remember, Cleaning the Glass filters out garbage time minutes and heaves at the end of quarters. Okay. They finished the season with the best three-point percentage of any team in the league, according to Cleaning the Glass, last season. And it was obviously a huge factor in the playoffs, the sweep over Phoenix, the 7-game series win over Denver in the second round. That was, three-point shooting was a huge part of that. Corner three-point shooting was a big part of that. That improved as the year went on. The Wolves actually were the best non-corner three-point shooting team in the NBA last season, which is an odd thing, but here we are. I've just pulled it up. Last season, they led the league in three-point shooting at 39.6% as a team. League average was 37.1%. They were number one in non-corner three-point shooting. So above the break threes, they were nearly 39%. They were almost 2.5% better than league average from above the break last season. And corner threes, they were fifth in the NBA in accuracy. That wasn't the case early this season. Early this season, the Timberwolves were struggling mightily to make threes. Like, they were generating mostly open looks, but they had guys that for their career were better three-point shooters than what they had been showing. And that was a major problem. Actually here, let's just do this. I could pull up what they were shooting for the first, October through mid-December. We'll do that. Minnesota was 13th in the league in three-point percentage. They were 5th in non-corner threes, which tracks, right? But they were 27th in corner three-point shooting percentage. So again, body work 13th in three-point percentage, which isn't awful. It's not awful by any stretch, but it's not what the Wolves need for this offense to function in a top 10 offense fashion. Remember, last year they finished like 17th in the league in offense. This year they kind of hovered around that for the longest time. And by the way, this is breaking news. I should have led here. The Wolves are now, as of this recording, in the top 10 in the NBA in total offense, according to Cleaning the Glass. They're 10th in offensive points per 100 possessions. And I had a bold prediction at the All-Star break when the Wolves were like 15th or 16th in the league, that they would be top 10 in both offense and defense by the end of the season. And they're there right now. That's huge. They're one of 5 teams in the entire NBA that's top 10 in both offense and defense. And the three-point shooting is a massive part of it. In terms of overall accurate, well, let's start with frequency. The frequency hasn't changed much. So I want to like underscore that. For the season, the Wolves are 4th in overall three-point rate, according to Cleaning the Glass, three-point frequency. Okay. And I guess we should talk about where they finished last year too. But yeah, we should probably do that. I realize if we're going to compare the two, then let's also talk about where they finished last year in terms of frequency, not accuracy, right? Because accuracy, they were number 1. They were number 1 above the break. Frequency last year, the Wolves finished lower than you might expect in the 23-24 season. Minnesota was actually 20th in three-point frequency last year. That has changed this year. This season, the Timberwolves went for, so let me just recap that quickly. 20th in frequency last year and 1st in percentage. This year, they're 4th in three-point frequency. Of course, Anthony Edwards being a massive part of that. And they're rising in percentage. Remember, they were middle of the pack back in mid-December. Now for the season, in terms of accuracy, the Timberwolves are up to 18th in accuracy overall for the season. Okay. Since January 1st, the Timberwolves are 2nd in total three-point percentage accuracy. Okay. So to recap, I know it's a lot of numbers, a lot of rankings, but they finished last year 1st in accuracy, but they were 20th in frequency. For the season this year, they are, the accuracy is just 18th, and the frequency is way up from last year. The frequency is up to 4th. So it's flipped. But since January 1st, they're doing both. Since January 1st, they are still 5th in overall frequency, three-point rate as a team. Again, up from 20 last year. Since January 1st, they're 5th in the league, and they're number 2 in the league in total three-point percentage. They're also 2nd in non-corner three-point accuracy. They're 6th in corner three-point accuracy. For whatever reason, last year's Wolves and this year's Wolves shoot above the break much better than they shoot for the quarters. So, like, actually, Nikhil's great at both, but, like, Nikhil's good above the break. Actually, Jade McDaniels has, I think, been a little bit better above the break than for the corners, which is weird. Ant is definitely better above the break. He shoots a lot more above the break than from the corners. All that to say, the Wolves are now combining last year's accuracy with this year's frequency. And that is a potent mix when they're also crashing the offensive glass. They also have the ability to score in transition, which they've done a little bit more off of live steals. They're not running more off of rebounds, but they're running more off of turnovers, as we really saw this the other night in Denver, early in that game especially, and when they kind of surged ahead in the third quarter. And then, of course, they still have Anthony Edwards in the half court, which is not the most efficient way for the Wolves to score, but it is a way for the Wolves to score, and they have Anthony Edwards and nobody else does, right? Like, in the half court, Ant can go score if you need him to. Would you rather have a wide open three from Ant or one of a number of other guys on the team? Yeah, of course. Would you rather score in transition? Would you rather score crashing the glass? Yeah. But they have all these ways to score. And now that they are, like, we knew that this team could be the best three-point shooting team in the league because they were last year. And obviously losing Carlton, like subbing Randle and DiVincenzo for Karl-Anthony Towns matters, but DiVincenzo's a really good three-point shooter too. Remember, DiVincenzo last year was 3rd in the entire NBA in three-pointers attempted and three-pointers made. The dude can shoot the three. He just wasn't early this season. And we'll talk about that. I mean, that's obviously the biggest swing is there's a small handful of guys that we can point a finger at and say, these guys weren't shooting the ball well in the fall. And now they're lights out, or at least now they're just where they should have been for their, like where they have been for their careers. Now things have kind of progressed to career means. All right, well, let's do that next. Let's talk about some of those individual players and then talk about the overall impact. We could touch on some of the other changes to the offense too, the offensive rebounding, the transition, et cetera, and how this is now a top 10 offense. And then we'll close by looking at the Wolves Magic matchup. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at FanDuel. March Madness is here. This Sunday is Selection Sunday, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. There's tons of favorites in the bracket, of course. There's teams that haven't been there in a while that are going to be there and are good, like, say, Louisville in the ACC. There's teams that are rarely there that still aren't there, like the Minnesota Golden Gophers, of course, just firing their coach this week. FanDuel makes it easy to back whatever your favorite is with spreads, totals, and game props. You can stay in the action. Tournament games, of course, almost every day next week. There's always something exciting to bet on. And, of course, it's always easy and fast in the FanDuel app. It's very simple to use. When you win, you get paid instantly with no waiting around. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, let's talk about, or let's put the bow on the offense, I guess. So to recap, the Wolves last year finished number 1 in accuracy. They were 20th in frequency outside the arc. Currently this season, they're 18th in frequency. 4th in frequency, but they're 18th in accuracy. However, since January 1st, they're 2nd in accuracy. Continues to trend up. And that's, by the way, how bad they were early this season. And Anthony Edwards was not the problem. Anthony Edwards has shot the ball with frequency and accuracy all season long. The problems early in the season were Mike Conley and Dante DiVincenzo, really the main two. To a lesser extent, Nickeil wasn't as good early in the season outside the arc. But those are the guys who are also shooting it with more frequency. Like, if you look at just number of threes per game, Dante DiVincenzo is 2nd on the team in 3-point attempts per game, and Conley and Alexander Walker are tied for 5th. They're really technically tied for, Julius Randle attempts 4.6 per game. Alexander Walker and Conley attempt 4.5 per game. So we'll say they're, for all intents and purposes, tied for 4th on the team in attempts per game. So, if you have 3 of your top 6 3-point shooters in terms of attempts that are all shooting below career averages, including your number 2 that's shooting 7 per game, that's a problem. But now, these guys are all shooting where they should be. Dante DiVincenzo has been on a heater. He's up to 39.4%. Last year in New York, he was 40.1%. So he's still, he's a little less than a percentage point behind where he was last year. The year before in Golden State, he was 39.7%. So he's right in line with where he was the last 2 seasons. And, of course, his career average is lower, but the last 3 years, he's right around 40%. So he's where he should be. Early this season, he was hovering around like 33%. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, same thing earlier this season. He was like 35, 36-ish %. Last season, he was 39%. This year, he's up to 39.9. So basically 40% from 3, and his frequency has gone up. That has been huge to have him coming off the bench. Well, he got a few starts in there, but mostly coming off the bench and knocking down threes. Mike Conley is the big one. The biggest, well, DiVincenzo is the biggest one in terms of volume. Conley's the biggest in terms of how bad to how good he's been outside the arc, especially when you look at how important he is to the Wolves offense. If he's not making threes, he's pretty much unplayable. And there was a question about, would his shot come back? He's on the wrong side, very much the wrong side of the, he's 37. He's 37 and a half now, and had the wrist injury coming into the season, and still, I'm sure, is a lingering problem for Mike Conley. And he just could not hit the broadside of a barn early in the season. And there was some real question as to, like, is the 3-point shot gone? Are the legs completely gone? Is he playable at all this year? And now he's been lights out. He's back over 40%. Last season, he was just insane, 44% from outside the arc. He's now at 40.5%. But if you go back to early this season, like, it started, he shot 0 of 5 from outside the arc on opening night. This is a little bit arbitrary, but, like, take Mike Conley through Christmas, okay? Mike Conley through Christmas was, my number's not going to load on me now, is it? I promise it wasn't good, his percentage. Let's see if this thing will load on me, or load for me. But Mike Conley through Christmas was not a good shooter. Mike Conley, basically January on, has been pretty lights out. Pretty much what you would expect to see from Mike Conley. That makes a huge difference, both for the actual like functionality of the Timberwolves offense and the results in terms of the team 3-point shooting. Makes a massive difference. So those would be the top three. Again, the Ant frequency and accuracy has been there. Julius Randle's has kind of been the same all year. It's been a little bit below where it needs to be, but the frequency isn't so much that it's a major hindrance, right? Like he always was more of a volume 3-point shooter anyway, except for that one outlier season. And the Wolves have like his volume's gone down, which is a good thing, but he still needs to be able to shoot it and make it when he's open. And we saw that the other night. I think he was 2 of 3 or 3 of 5 or something from outside the arc. And that's great. Like you'll take that when you can get it. That's a reasonable game from Julius Randle from outside the arc, to be sure. All right, here's the Mike Conley number. It finally loaded. He was 36% through Christmas outside the arc, which isn't, I said he couldn't hit the broadside of the barn. That's not fair to based on that. But there are obviously some cold stretches in there which were really harmful to the Wolves. And since then, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess I picked Christmas, so let's pick the game after Christmas through now. Mike Conley is 45% from outside the arc, which means, of course, for the season, he's a shade over 40%. So he shot the ball slightly better than he did all last season since Christmas. And that makes a huge difference. The Wolves as a team, if this version of the Wolves continues to rebound the basketball the way they have on the offensive glass and continues to be aggressive, selectively aggressive in the open floor, this offense is going to keep ascending. And by the way, like the turnovers are always going to be a problem for because of the way the Wolves play and the way that Randle and Anthony Edwards choose to distribute the basketball, but that's incrementally improved. Like they're up to like around 20th now in turnover rate. They were bottom 3 for the longest time, bottom 5 for forever until very recently, but they're now top half in offensive rebounding in the league. They've been number 1 in the league in free throw rate since January 1st. We've talked about that. And the offensive rebound thing is crazy. Like we dug into this a bit more a couple weeks ago, but since January 1st, Cleaning the Glass has this points per miss, plays per miss, and points per play off of putbacks statistic. The Wolves are second in the NBA behind only Houston, which is just a monster on the offensive glass, in putback points per 100 missed field goals / reboundable free throws. So missed field goals and free throws on the offensive end. How many points do you score after a miss? The Wolves have scored 26.1 points per 100 missed field goals since January 1st, second in the league. They're 7th in putback plays generated, and they're 5th overall in points per 100 putback plays since January 1st. And again, for the season, they're now top half in offensive rebound rate. And the Cleaning the Glass number for offensive rebound rate is, let's see, for the season, I guess they're 16th at Cleaning the Glass. They're 14th at Basketball Reference. So roughly top half. They are, because they're number 1 in free throw rate since January 1st. They're 11th overall this season in free throw rate. They're still 12th in effective field goal percentage because of the 3-point shooting increase, because they continue to improve there. And they're still, when they get put opportunities in the paint, which is another thing that is derived a little bit from the crash in the offensive glass, that helps that overall effective field goal percentage. So the combination in increased opportunities off of offensive rebounds, which is both free throw attempts, that contributes to the free throw rates. It's easier attempts at the rim, and their kickouts to wide open 3-point shooting, combined with the improved free throw rate, which is a little bit linked to offensive rebound rate. It's linked a little bit to running off of steals, opponent turnovers, and then also the 3-point shooting percentage, which is also linked to the offensive rebounding because you're getting kickouts for open threes. It's also linked to some more transition opportunities because you're going to find more open shots in transition, either at the rim or outside the arc. They're all linked together. And if they can continue to make the open threes, that's what ties this all together. It really is. And all three of those factors, transition opportunities, offensive rebounding, and 3-point shooting, they're all related to one another. And that's what's made this a top 10 offense. And Anthony Edwards is going to get the headlines, and that's the bite-sized thing on SportsCenter, and I get it, and it should be. He's the highlight reel. He's the best player of the team, no question. But he can't do it all himself. And he's also part of all of this, right? Like we've seen his offensive rebound rate uptick slightly, and he's, still shooting the ball well from outside the arc, facilitating a little bit more here recently as well. But the point is, what is going to augment Anthony Edwards on the offensive end? It's all of the above working together to make this a top 10 offense. And now we're talking about a team that is a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. along with only Cleveland, Boston, and Oklahoma City, and Memphis as well. So the Wolves are one of 5 teams. Last year, only 4 teams in the entire NBA finished with a top 10 offensive defense. The Wolves are now the 5th team in the league. They're 5th in defense and 10th in offense. And by the way, the only team that's top 5 in both categories is Oklahoma City. Nobody else is top 5 in both. So massive offensive improvement, the 3-point accuracy, and specifically if you're looking at individual players, Conley, DiVincenzo are the 2 big ones, then also Alexander Walker. And in terms of rotation guys, the only ones that are below league average when it comes to their 3-point shooting percentage are Julius Randle and Jaden McDaniels, obviously not including Rudy Gobert. Those are the only guys that are shooting below league average from outside the arc. Everybody else is well above league average, like 39% or greater. I mean, Anthony Edwards, Mike Conley, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, all 40% plus. DiVincenzo's nearly there. Naz Reid's actually 39% as well. So 5 of the Timberwolves' primary 8 rotation guys are shooting 39% or better from outside the arc, which is bonkers. Jaden McDaniels, 33.5%, Julius Randle, 32%, and then Rudy Gobert would be the other ones. And then actually the guys just outside the rotation, Jalen Clark's 41%, and obviously small volume, very, very limited volume to this point. Terrence Shannon, limited volume, almost 37%, and Dillingham, 36%. Like, you go a little bit deeper, and this team can still knock down threes. This is a thing, and of course, I don't have the stat in front of me, but the Wolves have outscored their opponents by 30 points a game or something on 3-pointers over this win streak. I mean, they did it again the other night. Last time out, in the win over Denver, they outscored Denver by 30 points outside the arc. They made 10 more threes than them. That's a pretty good recipe to winning games. Yes, you live by the 3, you die by the 3. That is a little overplayed, but there's some truth to that. You might have a cold night shooting, but that's why you have Anthony Edwards. That's why you have a top 10 defense, top 5 defense, right? So there's so many different layers here, but the improvement on 3-point shooting has made a massive difference, to be sure. All right, let's close by talking Wolves Magic, and that's the last thing we'll do here today on the show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. That's one of those that can trick you a little bit. There's a lot of fees and stuff involved in food delivery, and you can kind of line it all out and get a better sense for what you're spending. Now it's easier to budget smarter and save more. And also, instead of juggling multiple apps, you could just use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. You can do all that within the Monarch app. And maybe it's just managing money, collaborating with your partner. My wife and I, using one app is way easier. And then that way we could track shared accounts, set goals. If you have your own personal accounts and you want to be able to kind of manage all that together and stay on the same page without the stress, take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, Timberwolves take on the Magic tonight. 6-game winning streak on the line. This is, of course, one of those games that does make me a little bit nervous just in terms of, it's a game they should win, but it's a team that's not actually horrible. And at first glance, you're like, they're below 500 and they beat them by 20 last time. But you got to look a little bit deeper, right? Paolo Banchero missed a ton of time early in the season, did not play the last time the Wolves played them. Wagner didn't play the last time the Wolves played the Magic either. And so that matters. All that to say, the Wolves are 10-point favorites at FanDuel. At home, Friday night, not a back-to-back. Minnesota is 10-point favorites against Orlando. Oh, and by the way, Orlando did play Thursday. So it is a back-to-back for the Magic. They beat the Pelicans by 20 on the road in New Orleans. Pelicans are awful. I get it. Orlando's actually not that bad of a team. When the Wolves beat them by 15 back in early January, Orlando was still 5 games above 500. They're playing much better than that now. Overall for the season, They played much worse coming out of that because they are still 5 games below 500. But they have Banchero back, and they have Wagner back. I always blank on which Wagner I want to talk about, and so I always just say Wagner because right before I say his name, I wonder, is this the right Wagner? Franz Wagner. There we go. Franz Wagner is the better one. They have both Wagners were out last time. They have Franz Wagner back. And that makes a big difference for them. I mean, both Wagner and Banchero are basically 25-point per game scorers. Neither one can shoot the three. The Magic as a team can't shoot the three. All right. So, I guess let's start here. This matchup makes me nervous for a couple of reasons. One, because the Wolves have won 6 straight and they do dumb things like lose to teams they should beat, and they're 10-point favorites. It just feels like a game that they could lose. Orlando, I thought that they would be a better offensive rebounding team this year, which is, of course, something that I always look for in teams that could beat the Wolves, but they're actually middle of the pack. They're 17th in offensive rebound rate. I also worry about teams that shoot the three well. They're dead last at 3-point shooting. So the Timberwolves are going to choke this away version of me is pretty nervous about this game, but the actual matchup isn't a bad one. Magic are traveling, second night of a back-to-back. Wolves are rolling. They've won 6 straight. Orlando is dead last at 3-point shooting. They are just middle of the pack at offensive rebound rate. They play at a glacial pace, a super slow pace. They are, according to Clean the Glass, they're the 3rd worst offense in the league, the 2nd worst in terms of effective field goal percentage, and they're dead last at 3-point percentage. Okay, so for all those reasons, the Wolves shouldn't have a problem. On the flip side, Orlando's a top 3 defense. They force a lot of turnovers. They rebound the basketball really well on the defensive glass, which in the past I wouldn't highlight as this is an issue, but the Wolves have been crashing the glass so often. Now, again, they don't run either in transition. So I think the Wolves will still crash the glass and just kind of say, we'll give ourselves some extra opportunities against a really good defense, because they may not generate that many open shots. They may not get to the rim super easily against this team. So you might need those offensive rebounds. And then the other thing the Wolves have going for them is Orlando's the worst team in terms of defensive free throw rate. So it's actually a good matchup for Minnesota. If you just look at on paper, this matchup should work out for the Wolves. They should get to the line a bunch. They should be able to run when they want. They should be able to shut down the Magic offensively because they don't offensive rebound a ton. They're middle of the pack in that regard, and they're dead last in 3-point shooting. So the Wolves should win this game. That said, we've seen this team do dumb things like lose to teams they should beat, and lose some of that momentum. They've struggled a little bit at home, although it's been better lately. So certainly one to be a little bit worried about. We know that Banchero, I don't know how exactly they're going to defend Banchero. My guess is they give Julius Randle a shot. I mean, I don't know. I guess it could be Randle and have, there's anybody you could put Gobert on to roam. There's nobody on the Magic besides, well, no, there's really nobody on the Magic that shoots the three. Literally the only guy in their roster that has a league average shooting percentage or 3-point percentage this season is Mo Wagner on 2.5 attempts per game. He's only played in 30 games and he's 36%. Nobody in their rotation shoots the three above 33%. I take that back. Corey Joseph's healthy back in the rotation. He's 36%. That's it. Nobody is shooting the three at volume or at accuracy for the Magic. You could put Gobert on almost anybody and let him roam and protect the paint. And that's probably the move is some combination of Randle McDaniels on Banchero. And, of course, I should mention Minnesota native Jalen Suggs is out for the season. And Mo Wagner is out for the season as well. And Cole Anthony, by the way, did not play Thursday night, is listed as questionable for Friday. So who knows? There's a chance he doesn't play as well. And he's obviously a big piece of what they do. He's 5th in scoring on their team, but an important rotational guard for them. So all that to say, this is a matchup the Wolves should win. They actually match up pretty well with the Magic, and the Magic have been struggling. They're a bad offensive team, and the Wolves have been rolling offensively themselves, so they should be able to score on Orlando's defense. So the Wolves should win this game, although it doesn't mean that I'm not a little bit worried about it. And I should say, I guess I did mention this. The Wolves won by 15 last time they played Orlando. There was no Banchero. There was no Wagner. Their leading scorer in this game, Orlando scored 89 points, and it was Gogo Batadze led the team with 15 points. And he's coming off the bench for them now that they're much healthier. So Like, not a team the Wolves should struggle to stop. Let's put it that way. So that's Friday night. First game of this 5-game homestand. It's obviously an opportunity for Minnesota to make some hay. They get Utah on Sunday evening. They get Indiana Monday on a back-to-back. Indiana is obviously a little bit tougher. And then they get 2 straight games against New Orleans at home. They really should sweep this homestand and have an 11-game winning streak going to Indiana a week from Monday. That's a lot easier said than done, but it's certainly doable. And it would be, I would say, a massive disappointment if they don't win 4 out of 5 on this homestand, given where they're at in this season. They have to come out of this homestand winning 4 out of 5, which would put them at 42-30. I should note Golden State won on Thursday night, so the Wolves are now a half game behind Golden State, but the Warriors have some tough games coming up. They play Milwaukee, they play the Knicks, I think, on Saturday. So a tough Golden State schedule. We're at the time of season where we can schedule watch, scoreboard watch. I think we're there. I think that's justified sitting here right now. All right. That's all we got for you today here on the show. I will actually be hosting the live postcast tonight over at Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. So if you're watching the game tonight, around 10 minutes after the game, so call it 9:30 to 9:40, 9:45 at latest, myself, Jack Borman, we're going to go live over at Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. We're going to chat about Wolves Magic, hopefully a 7th consecutive win. That audio will post here at Locked On Wolves if you can't catch it live, so listen late tonight or on Saturday on this audio feed. And then I'll be back on Monday. Monday will be the post-game pod from Wolves Jazz on Sunday. So I'll cover Magic tonight as the postcast and Jazz game on Monday as the regular Monday morning Locked On Wolves podcast. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Of course, you can also subscribe to the Locked On Wolves daily email newsletter at lockedondaily.com. It's one stop for Ultimate Wolves and NBA coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free right now at lockedondaily.com. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.